So my job is to try to remind every Ohioan that for the next 4 weeks, they have the opportunity to participate in early voting if they live in the 15th congressional district.
Securing the special election. It's less than a month until voters make their first big decision on who should replace Congressman Steve Stivers. I went one-on-one with Ohio's elections chief to see how your vote is being protected.
We have to send people to Washington who are willing to shake the system up because the leaders of this country...
From books to ballots, the author of Hillbilly Elegy wants to replace Senator Rob Portman. But how does he define his candidacy?
This really is going to save lives, and if we can spare another family from going through this, I would do anything to spare another family.
Stopping hazing, starting in Ohio, the victory for families touched by tragedy, and what they hope happens nationwide. Face the State begins now. It might be summer, but it's election season in Ohio. Mark your calendars. August 3rd, 2021 is a special election for Central Ohio. The main focus will be filling the seat left empty by this man, retiring 15th Congressional Representative Steve Stivers. Thank you so much for joining us for Face the State on this Sunday. I'm TRACY Townsend. There's been a lot of talk nationwide about election security and suppression. I talked with Secretary of State Frank LaRose, who says he's confident that Ohio stands for being a state where voting is convenient and trustworthy.
All right, so we have early voting underway. I feel like we just did this.
I know it's exciting though for us because we're already into the early voting period for this congressional special election, and here in Central Ohio, that means the 15th congressional district. So if you were accustomed to having Congressman Steve Stivers representing you, he's resigned to take the leadership role at the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. And so now we need to run both a primary and a general. The primary election is happening this summer. Of course, the general election will be this November. And so my job is to try to remind every Ohioan that for the next 4 weeks, they have the opportunity to participate in early voting if they live in the 15th congressional district. And that means 8 to 5 at your Board of Elections for the next 3 weeks. And that means the week before the election, we're going to stay open from 8 to 7. And then, of course, we have Saturday early voting and Sunday early voting that weekend before the election. We're one of only very few states in the country that offers that. So this is something that we're proud of. But now's also the time, Tracy, to get in your request for an absentee ballot. There's still plenty of time to go to voteohio.gov and print off the form. If you don't have a form, or a printer rather, you can get the form from your BMV locations, from a library. But the easiest thing to do if you don't have a printer is just to go to voteohio.gov/make-your-own. And we give people instructions to just take a plain old piece of notebook paper and a pen. And as long as you provide us all the information and then mail it to your Board of Elections, they will put a ballot in the mail to you. And it couldn't be easier to vote from the comfort of home. Up in the Cleveland area, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge was nominated and appointed by President Biden to serve on her cabinet. That's an exciting thing to have an Ohioan serving on the president's cabinet. She's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. And so there is a special congressional primary underway as well to replace her. And then there are some local issues, things like liquor options or levies for property tax issues in many local communities around Ohio. But yeah, the two main things are that 11th congressional district and 15th congressional district primaries. And that's what a lot of Ohioans are excited about coming up here in just a few weeks.
So voters and our viewers are hearing a lot about elections and their rights to vote and restrictions and voter laws. What do you want them to know about voting in Ohio?
That Ohio is an example for the rest of the nation to follow. It's unfortunate in many ways that there's a lot of hyperbole, there's a lot of exaggeration that really comes from both sides of the aisle. I think that both political parties, politicians sometimes have self-interested reasons for, hyping some of these things. I think that you'll hear a lot of talk about voter suppression on one side, a lot of talk about voter fraud on the other. My message to Ohioans is that voter suppression and voter fraud are never acceptable. They're never acceptable. Reasonable people on both sides of the aisle should be able to say, we're not going to tolerate voter fraud. We're not going to tolerate voter suppression. But the good news is, in Ohio, both of those are exceedingly rare.
Ohio has professional bipartisan elections administrators, and Secretary LaRose says that helps our state stand apart from others. More than a dozen candidates are competing to replace Stivers. You can find the full list of voting locations and early voting hours at 10tv.com/featured links. So, okay, who's running? We are following this race and the candidates with our partners at the Columbus Dispatch. Take a look. The Republican side of the race is crowded. Candidates include a coal lobbyist, business owner, and a county commissioner. There's also an attorney and some former and current elected leaders. As for the Democrats, the list includes a state representative and a retired Army colonel. The winners next month will face off in the November 2nd general election. About a year later, in November of 2022, voters will decide who replaces Senator Rob Portman.
We have to send people to Washington who are willing to shake the system up, because the leaders of this country who have plundered it have decided they're going to reward their friends with special tax breaks and not the companies right here in Middletown, Ohio. How about the middle class people?
That's author J.D. Vance, who's running for the Portman seat. He's the author of Hillbilly Elegy. Perhaps you've read the book or seen the movie. There's been some question, though, about where he aligns in the Republican Party. At one point, he criticized Donald Trump, but now he's praising him, and he's deleted any negative tweets about the former president. Listen to what he said on Fox News on Tuesday.
Like a lot of people, I criticized Trump back in 2016, and I'd ask folks not to judge me based on what I said in 2016, because I've been very open about the fact that I did say those critical things, and I regret them, and I regret being wrong about the guy. I think that he was a good president. I think he made a lot of good decisions for people, and I think he took a lot of flack. And as you probably appreciate, Alicia, you know, I've taken a lot of flack myself over the last few years for standing up for the president's voters, but also standing up for the agenda. And I think that's the most important thing, is not what you said 5 years ago, but whether you're willing to stand up and take the heat and take the hits for actually defending the interests of the American people, because that's what this business of politics should be all about.
Republican candidates have included Josh Mandel, Jane Timken, and Mike Gibbons, to name a few. The major Democratic contender is Tim Ryan, who is the current congressman for the District 13. And we did learn this week that Ryan's campaign says it has raised more than $2 million in the second quarter of 2021. That does put him on track with the Republican candidates. Ohio's other U.S. Senator, Democrat Sherrod Brown, shared these pictures for the first time on Wednesday. Wednesday, July 6th, exactly 6 months since the insurrection on the Capitol in Washington, D.C. You can see the damage to the desks, the shattered glass, the furniture flipped over. Again, those pictures from Senator Sherrod Brown. Now, the House is in the process of forming a 13-member select committee to investigate that deadly assault on 1/6. You'll recall Senate Republicans blocked a bill to create an independent commission. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has named 8 members to that panel, 7 Democrats and 1 Republican, Congresswoman Liz Cheney.
We have an obligation to have a thorough, sober investigation.
I first want to start off.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has yet to fill his 5 spots. The U.S. Capitol Police are moving forward with changes based on the Inspector General's reports, including enhanced training and planning, increased information sharing, attainment of additional equipment and surveillance technology, and a new effort to recruit officers. Back here in Ohio, nursing homes in crisis.
You can't get those memories out of your head of your loved one calling your name. He heard my voice when I went in there and I said, "Oh my God, what happened?" He said, "Babby, Babby, help me."
Coming up, what this family says led to their loved one's injury and what's being done to help statewide.
They owe me close to $2,000, and it's about 4 weeks now.
Unemployment, anger, and frustration. This morning, potential solutions from the state. First, though, Collins Law has been signed into law. What that means for your students' on-campus experience.
His family was left to mourn, but they turned their grief into something positive.
This week, Governor Mike DeWine signed an anti-hazing bill into law. Collins law sends a clear message. If you were involved in hazing, you'll face serious consequences. The law increases hazing penalties to second-degree misdemeanors and third-degree felonies with possible prison time. 10 TV's Clay Gordon spoke with families who made this day possible.
Colin Wyant's mother, Kathleen, speaking about the bill 2 years in the making today, calling it model legislation for the entire country.
We have made Ohio a leader in anti-hazing reform across the country.
It's been an agonizing process for Kathleen Wyant and her family.
And I can say that it feels as fresh as it did about a month after Colin died. So I've just learned, okay, I have to accept that this might be how it always is. So I have to learn coping skills to manage that.
Their son Colin died in a hazing incident at an annex of the Sigma Pi Epsilon fraternity at Ohio University in 2018. A law now in his name.
It should just be nothing but joy, but you know, I just can't stop thinking about what brought us here was, you know, having Colin taken from us and all the pain that comes from that, and that no matter what we do, even with all this work, nothing can bring him back, which is so hard.
Also speaking, Sherry Foltz.
It's only been 4 months. Do I want to be here? No. Obviously, I'd want my son back.
Investigators say Stone Foltz died at an off-campus fraternity drinking event at Bowling Green State University in March. Since then, the Wyants and Foltzes have joined together.
It's the most unusual bond because you know that they're the only people who truly get you.
It's nice to have them. It's nice to have the support that we have.
Working together to prevent this from happening to another family.
We're going to increase the transparency, education, all those things that will make a difference.
And it's not just in Greek life on campus.
With the transparency piece, parents will have all the information about an organization, not just fraternities, but any clubs, teams, or organizations their students want to join.
I think it's incumbent upon university presidents moving forward to make sure that parents understand that that's available to them.
I asked the governor about the future of fraternities and sororities on college campuses in Ohio.
We have an opportunity now. This is a new beginning. In regard to our quest in Ohio to get rid of hazing. And let's let it play out. Let's see how this goes before we cross the next bridge.
Clay Gordon, 10 TV News.
Although Collins law was signed over the week, it won't go into effect for 90 days. Some states don't have anti-hazing laws. Take a look at this map from stophazing.org. The blue states you see there have anti-hazing laws. The gray states do not. The states that don't have those laws include Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, and New Mexico. We have a closer look at how hazing laws look in every state. You'll find it on our website, 10tv.com/verify. Ohioans who received an overpayment of unemployment benefits, either from an error by the state or their employer, will soon get a waiver letter from the state. The state's unemployment director gave an update this week on how the department is working to get back stolen money. The state says it's only been able to retrieve about $150 million of the $440 million it knows of that was stolen from the state's unemployment system. The amount of unemployment fraud is not just impacting people whose bank accounts were hijacked, but also those who had their checks stopped because of suspected fraud. Here's Kevin Landers with a closer look.
I've been getting unemployment since last year, and then I got a notice that I had to prove my identity after getting unemployment for a year.
Ransom Rose is not alone in his frustration with ODJFS.
They owe me close to $2,000, and it's about 4 weeks now.
Rose, like many Ohioans, had his claim flagged for potential fraud. He said when he called the benefits center to get answers, he didn't get anywhere.
I was on hold for 2 hours.
Is that the first time that's happened to you?
That's the first time I was able to get through. I've never been able to get through up until then.
Today, the head of Ohio's Job and Family Service, Matt Damschroeder, said the state has created a fraud team to help identify and catch those who stole unemployment benefits, but was unable to say how quickly people like Rose could get their money back.
We continue to work aggressively each and every day to ensure that Ohioans in need receive the benefits and the job search support that they deserve and need.
I would say respectfully, Mr. Damschroeder, your unemployment system is totally broken, and your people are not well trained.
Director Damschroeder said people whose bank accounts were hijacked by fraudsters need to know this.
There is no evidence that would indicate that a data breach of any ODJFS systems was that exfiltrated data, resulted in an individual's account being taken over.
As for this out-of-work truck driver, he says without the unemployment benefits he's owed, he wonders how long he can keep a roof over his head.
My creditors won't wait for the state of unemployment to get their act together.
Again, that was Kevin Landers reporting. We also learned the state now has 800 call takers, and average wait times for general unemployment claims is 10 minutes. The head of the state's fraud investigation unit says it could take years before Ohio can prosecute those responsible for stealing millions of unemployment dollars. The FBI, the U.S. Secret Service, and 50 banks are all working to find the money and the people responsible. Now, if you need help with unemployment, we have resources on our website. Yes, it's at 10tv.com. All right, Ohio's Attorney General is warning elected leaders about commenting on various investigations, specifically the investigations into the deadly shootings of Ma'Khia Bryant and Andrew Teague. Those cases are now headed to grand jury. Bryant's shooting happened on April 20th on Legion Lane. As shown on police body camera video, Ma'Khia Bryant is seen going after two women with a knife. Columbus police officer Nicholas Reardon fatally shot the 16-year-old girl. In March, Andrew Teague led Columbus police on a chase that ended with him crashing into other drivers on I-270. Law enforcement said there was an exchange of gunfire. Columbus police officer John Kiefer and Deputy Michael Severance fired their weapons, fatally wounding Teague. AG Dave Yost warned elected leaders about making comments about cases like these before they are fully investigated.
As an elected leader, let me say that I am very bothered by particularly elected leaders who ought to know better, who immediately rush to judgment, who call for particular actions, whether it be an arrest, an indictment.
Yost has referred those cases to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. The prosecutor says both cases will go to the grand jury, and there is no timeline. The chief of the Columbus Division of Police announced a new detail right after the holiday. It's aimed at cutting down on violence. The new park detail rolled out on Tuesday with 25 to 35 bike-trained police officers who will focus on patrolling and ensuring safety at any of the city's 170 parks. Some background on the new top cop. Chief Elaine Bryant makes history for a couple of firsts. She's the first black female, and her hiring marks the first time the city of Columbus has hired a police chief from outside of the division. Chief Bryant is no stranger to law enforcement with more than 2 decades of experience. I talked one-on-one with the chief this week about the escalating homicide rate, a community where there is mistrust following last year's social justice protest, and as she takes the lead of a division where she's considered to be an outsider. Where do you start with a division where there's a lot of anger and frustration and mistrust? And hey, you came from the outside. Where do you start there?
Oh, well, I have to earn their trust. As a outsider coming into their division, it's crucial that I earn the trust of the officers that work with me, and I've been doing that. A lot of conversations, a lot of honest conversations. When an officer is doing the right thing, I will support them. But if an officer is doing the wrong thing, I will address that as well. So I think it's important, again, when we talk about holding people to a high standard of excellence, the officers, absolutely, I expect them to do the right thing for the right reasons at all times. So those conversations should be had amongst each other so that we can have a better understanding. And officers, when they're coming out the academy or even when they're in the academy, it's important that they learn the community in which they're going to be policing. It's important that they know and understand the culture. So I think a big part of that is for them to learn that as well, because then if they know the children in the community, if they understand the culture, if they understand some of the slang or the terminology or even the hand movements and things that we do, it won't be as foreign to them.
You can see more of my interview with Chief Elaine Bryant at 10tv.com. Some information in the U.S. Census isn't available just yet, so some are asking, was it ever even finished? Coming up, we verify what you might be seeing on social media. Even though it's 2021, detailed data from the 2020 census still isn't available. That has some viewers wondering what is taking so long. Brandon Lewis from our National Verify team looks into the latest status of the census.
Normally by now, we have detailed data from the U.S. Census that helps redraw legislative districts due to population changes. But we don't yet, and that has Verify viewer Laverne asking if the government even completed it. So, Laverne, let's verify. Our sources are the U.S. Census Bureau and the National Conference of State Legislatures. As you can imagine, this all starts with the pandemic. The census says it planned to start household visits in the spring of 2020, but that was right when the U.S. began shutting down. Counting was delayed by several months, but it did happen. On April 26th of this year, the census reported a final tally of more than 331 million Americans. However, it wasn't the full data. The law requires detailed information to help redraw legislative districts, and the census says that is delayed until mid-August. The National Conference of State Legislatures says the impact is trickling down to about 20 states who are mandated to redistrict this year, including New Jersey and Virginia, which have state elections this November that were supposed to be based on the new data. So, Laverne, we can verify it's true. The 2020 census was completed, but it's taking longer than usual to get the results because of the pandemic.
Well, you've been hearing about staffing issues in industries across the state. And when it comes to nursing homes, investigators say a lack of staffing is one of the biggest sources of frustration for families. The issues range from missed medications to slow response times. But one family believes the lack of staffing led to something even worse, their father's injury. 10 TV's Kevin Landers has their experience and what's being done to address their concerns.
You can't get those memories out of your head of your loved one calling your name. He heard my voice when I went in there and I said, oh my God, what happened? He said, Babby, help me.
This is the photo Babette Hernandez Martinez took of her 68-year-old father inside the room of his nursing home. She believes her father, John Wallace, fell out of his bed, and she blames the nursing home for allowing it to happen.
Poor training, lack of staffing. I think lack of staffing is probably a definite issue because he was on that floor for at least 23 minutes.
We're not naming the nursing home because it's not facing any sanctions for now. But according to Medicare.gov, it received a 2-star rating, meaning below average for staffing, a red flag, said the state's long-term ombudsman.
You should be concerned. Ask the facility about it. Why do you have only 2 stars staffing? What's happening? You know, is it because you don't have a registered nurse?
Nursing home staffing is a statewide problem.
There is absolutely a crisis.
Peter Van Runkle runs the Ohio Healthcare Association. It represents 1,000 assisted living communities, home care, and hospice service providers across the state. He says one way to solve the labor shortage, pay more.
Have to. There's no way around it.
But it's not that easy, he says. Many of the nursing homes are government supported, and they can only pay what the government is willing to reimburse.
You can't go and raise your price to the government. You can't go raise your price to an insurance company. They're going to pay you what they have decided they're going to pay you.
As for the family of John Wallace, they want to see nursing homes improve the care they offer their residents.
If these places cannot offer that to them, they should not be up and running and taking in more patients.
Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
To help address the issue of staffing inside nursing homes, a Cleveland man has created what's called the Nursing Facility Patient Bill of Rights. It would require every nursing home to have specific nurse-to-patient ratios, among other things. If enough people sign the petition, it will appear on next November's ballot. You can read more about it at 10tv.com. We thank you all for joining us here today, and we'll see you back here next week for Face the State.